All right, I think I'm live. Hey YouTube, so I'm getting ready to record an episode. Feels dark. All right, I'm getting ready to record an episode. A thought came to me, and I'm so grateful that I have this platform because I can literally share these analogies and epiphanies with people. So that's exciting that I get to do that. So I'm going to start recording, and let me just go to a different system so I can record on it. Okay. And if you follow my podcast, then you'll be able to hear this episode of my podcast. Let me just open up GarageBand. Okay. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste, and I'm a therapist from Boston. If you have never been in here before, thank you so much for being here because I appreciate you. If this is your first time in my podcast, I've been podcasting since July 2018, 2018, and I've had 2 seasons. In each season, I talk to people who are doing things to empower the lives of other people. So if you ever want to be a guest, if you feel like you fit the platform of this podcast, definitely send me an email at info@celestetherapist.com. So I've been talking to people who are doing things to empower other people. And then I also have been doing these bonus episodes where I talk about different issues that we all struggle with. And then I try to think about some solutions and ways in which we can deal with the struggle. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that the more that we are able to talk about the things that we struggle with, the things that we can't see, and we see people that are dealing with similar things, we start to feel more powerful, we start to have hope, and we start to think that we can really achieve it and we really can do it. So that's why I do this, and I'm so excited. December the 2nd, we're going to be in season 3. So today I want to do a bonus episode because I'm in Boston and it's raining. Yesterday was beautiful. I mean, it was so beautiful yesterday. And today it was so rainy. And something came to me. I said to myself, imagine if we understood our emotions the way we understand the change in the seasons. And if you don't live in an area where the seasons change, you may not relate as much to this analogy as other people may relate to it. But when I think about the season changes, so I grew up in Boston. So from the time I was born until I was about 15, I lived in Boston. And one of the things about being in Boston is that we have some hard winters. I remember one winter for probably 6 weekends straight, it literally was a snowstorm, literally. And even though that snowstorm was happening, and I would have to shovel my car and I would have to dig myself out of the house, I was okay with doing that because I had to get out the house, so I need to dig my way out. And I also said, spring's going to be here soon. I know spring is coming. I know summer's coming, so I'm not going to really sweat it like that, right? So I've always been hopeful about the change in the seasons, even though I have to endure some hard winters. When it comes to life, when it comes to the struggle, and if I think about winter, sometimes we end up being in a winter season, a cold season, and it feels like it's never going to change. It feels like this is all there is. So, because of how it feels, we sit in winter and we don't even work on creating anything different, or we don't work on any changes because the emotions and the feelings that we feel, they feel so real and it feels so hard to conquer that we cannot see our way out, right? We cannot think of any other solution, especially if all you know is things going wrong, if all you know is trauma, if all you know is hardship, then it's really hard for you to even see yourself being able to do things a different way. It's hard to see yourself even feeling like you can feel a different way if you've never been exposed to it. So one of the things that I do on this podcast is not only do I talk about these emotions we struggle with or the struggle, is I always try to bring up solutions, right? Even though I'm a therapist and I believe in therapy, I also realize that therapy is not as accessible to everybody. I also realize that it's hard to find people that you can relate to. There's so many different things about finding and having a therapist that may make it hard for people, right? And so one of the things about growing up in my society is that they always preach therapy or psychiatry, therapy, psychiatry. Like those are the only two modalities for healing when there's so many different ways in which we can work on our healing process. And so that's what I want to do. I want to like bring up some other ideas for you to think about so you don't feel like you just have to struggle, right? So if you're somebody that you say like, you know what, Celeste, this sounds like me. I've been struggling with my emotions and I feel like they take over. I want to be able to feel like, yes, it's cold and yes, it's the winter season, but I have hope that spring and summer will be here soon. So, number one, understand that emotions are normal. Emotions are a part of the human experience, contrary to popular belief, right? If I grew up in a household where if you're crying, there better be blood coming out, right? You can't be sad for quote unquote no reason. So emotions are a part. There's not just happy and sad, right? Or angry, right? There's so many other things that we have struggles with, and we have to understand that it's okay. Number two, how do they affect me? Right? We're all going to be affected by our emotions in different ways. Like some people that may get anxious may find themselves acting out in anger, right? Some people that are depression is a really good example on how it affects people differently, right? So we see the commercials about depression. People are like crying, stuck in bed, not able to go to work. You know, if you are person of color or maybe even grew up in a lower socioeconomic status, we be walking around depressed people all the time that still be going to work because we do survival well and we never really had luxury to like just lay in bed. So we're still affected by the depression, even though it doesn't look like it to other people on the outside, which is why it's so hard for people to come to grips with the fact that they have depression, especially people of color, is because we're so used to working. So everything that we struggle with will look different on everybody. It's not a one size fits all. I think that's why mental health can be so complicated because it's not like diabetes. I like using this example, but with diabetes, you know, if your sugar level is between a certain parameter or your insulin, they will tell you how much insulin to use if it gets to this level. And so we don't have that parameter thingy for mental health, right? We have a DSM that talks about the different diagnoses and how we diagnose people. But I have to understand myself to understand what's going to work for me, to understand how I'm going to be affected by this, right? And so if that's something, you know, how do I understand this, Les? You know what, you're right. That makes so much sense. But how do I understand it? One good way to do that is number three is record when they're happening so you can learn about yourself. That's so powerful when you can learn about yourself and understand how you operate, what affects you, what triggers you, because we're all going to be affected by something. We're all going to be triggered by something, but are we going to allow it to dominate our life, right? So if I were to start to record my interactions every day, take some intentional time to ask myself, like, how am I feeling? What triggered me today? When this person said this, I remember feeling a certain way inside, right? And my guided journal, 365 Days of Intentional Living, was created for that purpose, where every day I'm asking you how you're feeling, and I'm also asking you an intentional question so that you can take intentional time to really process what you're doing. So whether it's my guided journal or any journal or a notebook from the dollar store, you have to really sit and create intentional time to write down how you're feeling, how things are affecting you. You can't change anything if you don't understand where it comes from, right? There's no way to like, you can work on making changes, but if you don't understand where the emotions coming from, where the trigger is coming from, it's going to be hard to create sustainable changes. So that's number three, record. Number four, as you're paying attention to them, look at the decisions that you're making behind it. So one of the things that I need to drill into your head is that we have these thoughts that take place, right? And our thoughts are comprised of so many different things, whether it's media, whether it's our culture, whether it's our exposure. So we have all of these thoughts, whether or not they make sense or whether or not they're real, meaning like I could say like nobody likes me, right? And if I look at the evidence, that's not true. But If I think about things that may have happened and I allow those negative interactions to control my thoughts, I'm going to think that nobody likes me. So nobody likes me. Nobody likes me. How do I feel? I feel small. I feel sad inside. So thoughts, emotion, I feel sad inside. So I'm going to go out and shoot up. I'm going to go and eat, right? I'm going to eat. I feel small inside. I'm going to eat. I want to smother my feelings, or I'm going to go party. That was my main thing. Party, drink, party, drink. I'm going to go do that, right? Because of what's happening up here. But if I can't understand my thoughts and all I know is I feel small inside, I'm going to keep doing the same behavior over and over again. I may tell myself, all right, Celeste, this time you're not going to do that. But if I don't start from here, my thoughts, then I'm going to keep this cycle going over and over again. So, as you're paying attention to your emotions, as you're paying attention to how they're affecting you, when they're affecting you, I also need you to pay attention to, like, what am I doing about it? Now, if you find yourself saying, like, oh, wow, like I started paying attention to it and I'm realizing a lot of these behaviors that I'm trying to kick or that I'm trying to change is happening because of that, right? So, you understand why these behaviors are happening, then you can work on replacing those behaviors with some healthy ones. And everybody's process of replacing and what they're going to replace it with is going to look differently. But that's important to do. And one of the things I want to say about this process is that as you're trying to change and create these new habits, you have to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. So, as much as you have come to this aha moment, it's okay if you have a slip up, right? Because it's not going to just like change that quickly. So don't be hard on yourself. Remind yourself that you're human. Because the last thing I want to say about this is that it's a journey, right? Life is a journey. The process of healing is a journey where we have to be consistent in order for effective change to take place, right? We have to continue repeating. The whole purpose of my logo and shifting the way you think is about understanding. Once I understand, then I need to reframe those negative things that I'm saying or thinking or doing. And then I have to really take action. I have to repeat, right? The consistency is huge, and then healing takes place. But that has to happen over and over again. It's not a one-time thing and then I'm fine, right? I'm always evaluating my life. I evaluate my life the way I blink my eyes, and I blink my eyes automatically. I don't think about when I'm going to blink it. I don't think about when I'm going to evaluate my life, because I understand that if I'm not evaluating my life, if I'm not paying attention to like what I'm saying, if I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, then I'm gonna allow my emotions to control me. If you're somebody that's always like, oh, it's everybody else that is making me feel this way, I'm doing this because of them, it's because of you. If I'm constantly pointing fingers and telling myself that things are happening because of this person and the world's against me and that person's against me, if I continue saying that to myself, then guess what? I'm not gonna feel like I have power to make changes. Like, we have power to make the change. Y'all know, if you've been in my podcast or any of my live videos or anything that I do, I'm actually recording this podcast live. If you're following me on YouTube, you can watch me record my bonus episodes live. And if you've ever watched anything that I ever do or say, then you know how big I am on telling you that you have powers to make the change. But the problem is that we don't believe in ourselves, right? If you can believe in yourself and understand that you can make those changes, you can start being consistent and intentional. That's what it takes. So I really hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. If anything I ever say resonates for you, like, don't let this be the last time you like listen to this and then you wait till the next podcast or YouTube comes out and listen to it again, right? Take some time after this YouTube, if you're watching me on YouTube, or take some time after the podcast and like get a notebook and really write down some bullet points and things that you can do to make intentional changes. When I want to get to work on time, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being late, I need to get to work on time, I'm not going to just pray and hope that I get up and get to work on time. I never like just pray and hope it happens. I set my alarm, right? That's a very intentional thing that I do. So when I think about the internal changes that has to be made in our lives, I feel like there's no alarm that gets set. I feel like we don't do anything to be intentional about creating those changes. So that's what you have to do. I hope this was so helpful. I hope this makes sense. And I will talk to you guys later. Don't forget, December 3rd, we're going to be back in season 2. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody that you love. Even if you don't love them, you can still share it with them if you still talk to them. If you think this is going to be helpful for somebody. And if you are listening to me on Apple Podcasts, please make sure you rate me. You can follow me on like every social media site, literally Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube. All of those links you can find at celestetherapist.com. So until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Yay! Hey, always great advice. Thank you, Southern Grape Lady. I appreciate you so much for coming in here. If you're not following my podcast, make sure you follow my podcast. My podcast is streaming on everything, literally. You can SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you can get updates on when I go live and record these podcasts so you can be a part of the conversation. I appreciate you guys and talk to you guys later.